Well, good morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folari. Hope you had a great weekend. Let's begin the week at a nifty pace. Dr. Muda Yusuf is our guest this morning. Dr. Yusuf is the CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprises, and he joins us remotely, that is to say, via Zoom. Good morning to you, Dr. Muda Yusuf.
Good morning, Uncle Yori. Great to be with you.
Thank you very much, sir. Well, to talk about Nigeria's economic reforms, said that by and large it's pleased with it, but it then warns that there still are areas, much has been done that they commend, but they say that the point is that there still are aspects of it that indicate or portend a danger if we don't take care of matters. And so I said, okay, good thing we have Dr. Yusuf coming on. What are those things that they are talking about? They, for one, they said, look, it's good that the subsidy on fuel has been removed, but then what happens if there's a shortfall in the production of fuel and those kind of things? So maybe I just said that to start with, but maybe you could also enlighten us if there is indeed any areas of worry as we go along, because a lot of people are commending the gains as a result of the economic reforms. In trickles, to be sure, in trickles. We would want it to be an outpouring, but things don't work like that. But what do you think, Dr. Yusuf?
Well, thank you very much. Very good question. There are, I think, three major ways or metrics that we could use to assess the reform or economic performance so far.
Okay.
There is the metric of the macroeconomic indicators, which is about macroeconomic stability. That will speak to things like the exchange rate stability, not the costs, but the stability.
Okay.
That will speak to things like the GDP. It will speak to things like inflation. These are very critical variables in an economy when you talk about the stability of an economy. Stability is one thing. The cost is another thing. But stability is important for confidence building, especially among investors.
Okay.
It makes it easier for people to plan. It reduces uncertainty, it reduces turbulence, and it generally helps confidence of investors. So to that extent, I think a measure of stability has been achieved. Because don't forget, although this may sound like a broken record, the administration inherited an economy that was practically broken from a macroeconomic point of view.
Okay.
Although there was a lot of things that were concealed, a lot of patching up that was going on, but when you look at the economy from both the fiscal side, I'm talking about the fiscal operations of government, from the point of view of the external position, I'm talking now about, our balance of payment position, our foreign, it was really very, very bad. So the stability that we have achieved, it is something that is very good fundamentally, because you need to fix the foundation before you begin to talk of superstructures.
Okay.
So that is one thing that is positive. Then there is the angle of productivity in the economy. And that has to do with cost of production, cost of logistics, cost generally around the economy. And this has implications also for inflation. It has implications for the sustainability of businesses, for profitability, and even business growth. On the score of productivity in the economy, we are still struggling with that. Because productivity has to do a lot with your infrastructure. It has a lot to do also with your institutions. The infrastructure in this economy has been broken cumulatively over the years. Whether you are talking about power infrastructure, you are talking about the rail system, you are talking about the roads, you are talking about waterways, you are talking about even ICT infrastructure. So these are challenges that impact on productivity. And in fairness with the administration, these are not things you can fix in 2 years.
Okay.
Because some of these sectors have suffered negligence over the decades. Take, for instance, our rail system. When last have you had a major investment in rail? The same thing with our power sector. Many of the facilities on our national grid are aging, they are collapsing. The discos are struggling with the facilities that they bought into. The generation infrastructure is still an issue. So many issues around the structural issues in the economy. So that is another way of looking at economic performance. We are not doing so well as far as factors driving productivity is concerned.
Okay.
Then the third one, which is perhaps most important, is the issue of welfare. Now, to the average person, economy performance is about welfare. What is the price of bread? What is the price of fuel? What is the price of tomatoes? What is the price of garri? What is the cost of transportation? What is the cost of cooking gas? What is the cost of noodles? These are basic issues that affect welfare of the people. Again, the welfare is related largely to the issue of productivity in the economy. It's also related in a way to issues of the macroeconomic environment. So these are basic metrics that people from different perspectives could assess the economy. And the welfare situation is not looking good. Because in the process of fixing the macroeconomic fundamentals, a lot of inflationary issues have been triggered, which significantly impacted on the welfare of the people. So there's a lot of social issues in the economy that a lot of citizens are complaining about. So when you talk about some of the gaps that we still need to deal with, there are gaps in the area of welfare, there are gaps in the area of productivity. But I must say, there are no quick fixes to these things. That is the reality.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Because I was going to go on and ask, and you've actually touched on some aspects of this. I was going to go on and ask that, well, as IMF is sort of being encouraging and is hailing Nigeria's economic reforms, they, however, note that poverty and food inflation are still, very much present and clear dangers to the objective of these reforms. So that's why I said you've actually touched on some aspects of this, because I was going to say, look, poverty, for instance, I can also put on your statement that these are not things that you're going to be able to sort out in a year or two. Food inflation is also there. You've spoken about it. So will this be spoiling? Will this be spoiling efforts, or it just will be slowing them down? Because I know those in charge of our macroeconomic policies must be keeping an eye on all of these things, and they won't be waiting for anyone. They won't be waiting for anyone. The macroeconomy field will just carry on its own, and the managers of the economy are supposed to input the right things to get us to where we need to be.
Yes, the point is very important. Unfortunately, when you are managing an economy, sometimes there are some inherent conflicts in the way some policy instruments also operate or function. Now, even the IMF and the World Bank are major proponents of a market economy.
Okay.
Now the market economy has consequences for inflation. They have consequences for even the welfare issue that you just referenced. So that is why for some of us, we need to build an ideological consensus as to how exactly we want to manage the economy. Because there is no economy that you can manage strictly according to the extremes of the ideological economic framework. Whether I mean extremes of market economy or extreme of a socialist economy. You have to find a middle ground. So to the extent that the market system is good, a market system relates to things like, the floating of the currency, for instance. It relates to things like, deregulation, removal of subsidy, allowing the market also to determine interest rates and things like that. These are basic philosophies of market economy. But to the extent that this market economy sometimes could also be hurting the citizens, to the extent that some of these market economic principles may also be coming with high social costs, the intervention of government becomes very important in some key sectors of the economy. That is why even in the US, which is like the melting pot of capitalism, they support some critical sectors like transportation. They support critical sectors like agriculture, particularly agriculture. And occasionally, when energy prices are getting out of hand, the government also steps in to make sure that energy prices come down. So the point I'm making here is that as an ideology or as an economic management framework, we should be on the lookout for instances of market failure. So that where markets are hurting the people, the government needs to step in and intervene. Intervention can be in the form of subsidy. It can be in terms of reduction in import duty. It can be in terms of concessionary credits. These are the things that are done to mitigate the pains of some of these policies. And a bit of that is going on, but perhaps it's not going far enough.
Because I was going to ask.
I think.
Sorry, sir, because I was going to ask the question if any of that, in your view, is actually going on. And you said, well, perhaps at a minimal level.
Yes, a bit of that is going on. For instance, if you take energy, as we speak today, if we allow the power sector electricity providers to charge what they will call cost-reflective tariff.
Yes.
I don't think many people will not be able to afford electricity. Not even, because even the band A, that means you have to throw everybody into band A. And even at that band A, there may even be still some elements. So the electricity sector, as we speak today, is still being heavily subsidized by government.
And not very many people know that. Not very many people know that.
But not many people know. But the government is still heavily subsidizing it. That is why the discos and all of them are still saying that the current tariffs for band B downwards are still not cost reflective. That is why, as we speak today, the generating companies are saying that they are still being owed about 4 trillion or 5 trillion naira. These are bills that government is going to pick up. Again, you can see that even the government is resisting the increases in electricity tariff. So these are some areas in which the government is stepping in to minimize the social impact of the reform. Also, even in the foreign exchange market, initially second half of 2023, to the first half of 2024, we had what you can call a complete flotation of the currency. I'm talking of the exchange rate.
Yes.
Where the rates were galloping almost on daily basis. But from the second half of 2024 up to now, we have seen some steady and periodic intervention by the central bank. Because if you are talking of complete flotation, the central bank will not intervene at all. But what we have seen in the last few months is that the central bank regularly intervenes to ensure stability. That is also another example of how the government or agency of government intervene to ensure that we normalize prices and we minimize volatility in the economy. So, the examples. Then in the area of infrastructure, you cannot leave infrastructure to the private sector entirely. That is one area where the government has a major role to play. Again, the extent of intervention in infrastructure also depends on the financial capacity of government. Because if you ask the private sector to come and be fixing roads and all of that, by the time they put the toll on the roads, not many people will be able to pay the toll. Look at what happened on the toll on Lekki-Epe Expressway. By the time the investors completed the project, for that investment to be viable, they put 3 toll plazas. That is what can make it viable from a private sector point of view. But from a social point of view, it was not feasible. Those toll plazas are still there till today.
Yeah.
Because that model was not working, they had to reduce the effective toll plazas to 1, which is the one very close to the Oriental Hotel. Then when the NSAS and all these things came up, it was vandalized. And as we speak today, there is no toll plaza on that route.
It's not working anymore.
The government has to, yes, the government had to pick the bill because it wasn't working because of the show, because those on that axis had to be protesting. How can they be paying 3 tolls on a road that is just a stretch of about maybe 40 kilometers or so? So these are instances of conflict between the private sector objective and the social objective and development objective.
And so government has to step in those cases, is what you're explaining.
Exactly. That is what the government did. The government had to pay off the investors on that road because it was supposed to be a PPP arrangement, or supposed to be a concessioning thing. The government had to pay them off so that people can, make use of the road without paying anything. So the point I'm making is that managing an economy is not a tea party. It's not that easy. There are always trade-offs. There are always needs for intervention at various times. So these are the same thing with public transportation. One of the things that the citizens worry about is the high cost of public transportation.
Yes.
That is one area where government presence has to also be very, very pronounced. That is the way it is in many advanced economies. That's why many people don't put their cars on the road in many of those countries, because there are public transports that are heavily subsidized by government. But here, what we have over time is that the public transportation space is dominated by the private sector, almost 95% or more. So that is why the pain is so much. If you had stronger public sector presence or government provision in public transportation, the pain of all this subsidy removal will not be as much as it has been. So we need to define the role of government. We need to define the role of the private sector so that you don't have all these challenges about the fact that the reform is aggravating poverty and so on and so forth. But I must say again, those reforms were inevitable because the economy was was on the brink.
It was.
As at the time the administration took over, I'm not holding brief for them, but that is the reality. And those reforms needed to take place if you don't want a total collapse of the economy.
So yes. What I was going to ask you, first of all, IMF that I'm just using as a background here, they approved the tax reforms. They said, aha, now this is something good. So they approved that. So there's always this, this sort of drive to shore up a revenue. And one of the ways in which this is thought can be done is, with the tax reforms, so that a lot of tax that is not captured now will be captured. I don't know if you agree that this indeed will make a significant difference in terms of what we're talking about now, providing better funding for other crucial, chores that government has to, do.
That is very, very important. Because if the government doesn't have the resources, the tendency is to be accumulating more debts, which is also very injurious to the economy. But we need to look at these things from a number of perspectives. It has to be a combination of factors to ensure we have, fiscal sustainability. We have enough revenue.
Yes.
The first one is to ensure that we minimize waste and deal with the problem of corruption. The economy is still bleeding from corruption at all levels. Because again, let me also say, when we talk about economy, it's not only about the federal government. It's about the state government. It's about the local governments. Because all the tiers of government have things that they have to bring to the table to address both economic and social problems that we often complain about. So we need to ensure that even the little that we have, we use it, transparently, optimally, and we get value for money, and we minimize corruption. That is one. Secondly, is the fact that we need to optimize government assets. There are some countries in the world, they get more revenue from non-tax revenue by virtue of the assets that they have. We have huge assets in oil and gas, for instance. That is what most of the Middle East countries, that is what they leverage on.
Yeah.
They don't tax people that much. The tax there in those environments are very light. But they have assets that they utilize very well. They don't mismanage it. They don't abuse it. There is no corruption around it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is, I'm talking of oil and gas assets.
Yes.
But over the years, in our own climate, we have mismanaged that sector, unfortunately.
Okay. One moment, sir. Let me bring in retired AIG Duro Simi. He has called in. Good morning to you, sir.
Morning, Uncle Yori.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for calling in.
Listen to the man at the studio.
Dr. Muda Yusuf.
My contribution this morning is that agriculture is where we have our comparative advantage. We need to embark on agriculture. Recently, the president launched 2,000 tractors. Very good. But what I think we need is the smaller ones that can be used by small-scale farmers. The hand-grazing one, the one that looks like motorcycle. We need to bring more of that to Nigeria so that that type of thing can reach the nooks and crannies of Nigeria where the farmers actually reside. Number two, our protein, that is the animal we consume, the cow. Most of them are imported. I can say not less than 50% of the cows we consume are either from Benin Republic, Niger Republic, Chad, and etc. from across Africa. They know they have a good market there. We must develop our own indigenous, modern cattle that can stay in Nigeria instead of it importing. Virtually everything we are consuming is imported. So the animal scientists in our federal university should be encouraged to breed our own cows that can actually be brought, be breed in Nigeria and made available instead of depending on using server to import cows to Nigeria. Food is very important. That's a proverb that says, when food is out of poverty, poverty is no more. Government intervention in agriculture is very important. Then transportation. These gas buses that we're talking about, gas stations should be made available at the right places. And buses that are actually using gas, should be brought and sold to our local transporters so that the Nigerians who are ready to abandon the car, we have an alternative to move about without actually depending on buying this high-cost petrol. If government can do this, that means people who are campaigning about no food, no transport, will stop. And then we must secure the agricultural production belts. That is Benue, Niger, Plateau, Sokoto, Kebbi, at this raining season, because it's their planting season. The enemies of government are always ready to make sure that farmers are not allowed to go to their farms. After the planting, they will come back in the next 4 or 5 months again to attack these areas and ensure that even whatever they are able to produce are not out to get into the market. Government security agencies should ensure that agricultural production belts are well secured around here, and the enemies of the government are ready to continue to attack the farmers so that there is no production. Thank you, Uncle Yori.
Thank you very much, sir, for calling in. That's retired AIG Durosumi calling in from Lekki. I'll tell you what, Dr. Yusuf, before you react to that, let me quickly take a break so we can get that out of the way, and then I won't need to interrupt you once you begin to speak. Do stay with us, please. We'll be right back. Okay, then, welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us. Our guest is Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise. And we're looking at matters arising from Nigeria's efforts at economic reforms. And by all accounts, you know, things are definitely improving. But the impatience of it all is that maybe not at a sufficient rate for most people. I mean, Dr. Muda Yusuf, our guest, he will soon be back on. He has said that these things can't be done quickly. Nigeria was tethering at, it was just teetering at on the brink of collapse when the Tinubu administration came in, and so they've had to look into those matters. Now, the IMF has said that, yep, Nigeria, by and large, you're doing well, but you see, Nigeria's growth is being driven by increasing the output, oil output, and that's according to the IMF. And we need to be diversifying. We need to be doing quite a number of things. But just before I go on, I've just been told that Mazi Okorafor has come on the line. Let me not keep him waiting. Good morning, Mazi Okorafor.
Yeah, good morning, Sayuri. Good morning, I guess. Well, thank God today is Monday. Now, when we talk about this economic reform, at least the indices of the present government on the economic zone is yielding dividends. What do I mean by yielding dividends? If you look around now, after the signing of this tax, before the signing of this tax, let's look at the aviation sector. At least we have seen how the aviation sector is moving, in as much as the cost of transportation is getting higher because of the aviation fuel. Now, you have seen those ones that are not doing well. What do they do? The minister will tell them, look, put your house in order so that the aviation industry moves. You come back to our educational sector, at least this is a regime that has given the economic power to the Nigerians. How? As a typical Nigerian, those of them who cannot afford their school fees or just anything you may call it, at least the few that are benefited, at least economically, their parents that reduce the burden for them. Government are taking the burden. from the parents for the students themselves when they graduate to pay back. That's a long-time project, not a short-time project. It's moving. Now, what I will say that the new tax laws that the federal government, statistics have shown that the elite in Nigeria, they don't pay tax. That percentage that pays taxes in Nigeria are those people who are civil servants, public servants. Now look at the exotic caste people are using. Ask me how much is tax they are paying. They are just paying peanuts, which is not healthy. So if you want a luxury life, try as much as possible and do what? The government should make sure the tax revenue, they pay it. Not a question of elite will go there, they just do abracadabra and disappear now. The gold box will come back to that. But look at their incidence rate is balancing. Every day, either it increased by 20% or 10% or 5%. That is the system. But Nigerians should do the best because the taxes that the government has, the big tax bills they have already signed into, let it be implemented. How the government plan it, let the needful be done. Because we are good policy makers, but our major problem are always the word implementation. Honestly, the tax form, I pray that the authority concerned or the managing it will do it well. Good morning, Basil Crawford from our school in Abia State. Have a blessed day in Lagos.
Thank you very much, Mazi Okorafor. Okay, and I'm happy to say that Dr. Muda Yusuf is back on technically. He's always been there, but now and again technical issues will come. So thank you very much for your patience, Dr. Muda Yusuf, CEO Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise, who is joining us via Zoom this morning. When the retired AIG, Mr. Durosimi, called in, he had, we might have spoken about it, peripherally, but he linked security and agriculture. And I think you had also referred to that in passing at the top of the program. And this is because we have the issue of food poverty, according to the IMF, then food inflation, then there, of course, is general inflation. So AIG Durosimi, he sort of brought those two together and said, look, without security, agriculture is going to be where it is. So government has its work cut out for it. In addition to everything that you would think, it's not just about, well, what is the word? It's not about macroeconomic or even microeconomic. It's actually about a workable environment for the farmers to be able to do what they need to do. Maybe I'll get your commentary on this, that without the security to, secure the food basin of Nigeria, then this is, I don't know how this is going to work. You spoke about corruption earlier. That's also in the mix. In fact, I think you can put, you can put corruption, you can put insecurity, all of those into one basket as things that are really troubling us in Nigeria. How do we go from here?
Yes, the point made by the retired AIG is very spot on. I mean, very appropriate. You see, food security is very key, just as he said. There's a proverb in Yoruba that if you take food out of the problems that people have, whatever is left will be manageable.
It's very manageable.
So issue of food security is very, very important. And two things are very critical. The first one is to ensure that we have security around the country, particularly in the food belt, just as he said. Because if the population or the populace, the farming populace are not, if they are not secure, there is no way they can farm. And no matter what we say, they say account for almost 80% of the food that we eat. So security is extremely very important. The second very important thing is technology. Mm-hmm. Now, the world has moved far, far away from the way we practice farming in Nigeria. Our population is growing. We're over 200 million people. These hoes and cutlasses cannot meet our demand, even in the best of times. So how do we ensure that we transform the sector and make it more tech-driven? Look at all sectors of the economy. I mean, yours is a media house. Look at how technology has transformed.
Yes.
Between your days in NTA, where we used to enjoy you on NTA Network News, and today,
Yes.
look at the difference.
Yes.
Look at health sector. Look at financial sector. Look at any sector. Technology is playing a major role, but not yet in agriculture, in our own environment. So we need to do a whole lot to ensure that we infuse technology to improve productivity in agriculture, because productivity is extremely very low, even in areas where we don't have security challenges. And this issue of technology applies to both livestock and crop farming.
Yes.
We need technology, and we need to drive that through our policies.
In fact, Mr. Drosimi brought it up that even our cattle stock, our beef, that is, according to him, largely imported. I thought we were doing okay there. So you learn every day that apparently not so from people who know. I thought that animal husbandry and all those kind of cattle ranching, that was actually helping. Only to hear that Nigeria still leans on importing, cattle and our protein, so to speak. I don't know if it's the same for poultry, but people in the poultry industry are saying that life has become impossible for them, impossibly expensive, and this has had a knock-on effect on the price of food generally. So he brought that up. I guess we're actually itemizing the little, well, not so little, the headaches that government must resolve if this whole economic reform thing is going to work out the way it was supposed to work out. It's like there's an enabling environment within which these reforms can work, and these are the things that we're talking about now.
Exactly. I listened to the Minister of Livestock on the news yesterday. You know, he was he's on the president's delegation to Brazil. I know the Brazil is where you have a lot of agricultural productivity, whether you are talking of livestock or crop farming.
Yes.
And he was talking about the kind of very valuable engagement he had, with his counterparts in Brazil, to ensure that we apply this kind of technology. We don't need this kind of, the kind of cattle we have all around. They're not the kind that you have in modern day world, I mean, go to all these.
So technology comes into it again, as you were saying earlier.
It's technology. Our cattle here, I mean, milk maybe 1 liter a day. Some of the cattle in those areas, which they call dairy cattle, they can give up to 30 liters of milk a day. You can see the difference. This again is a question of tech.
Okay, one moment, please. Let me bring in Reverend Dominic. Good morning, Reverend.
Chief Yore, good morning to your guest. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yore, I'm not always comfortable when we quote an IMF. I don't know why a man should be the problem and the solution at the same time. Your guest there is one of the best economists I listen to in Nigeria. I'm not an intelligent man like your guest. I don't know why they should not come home and define our economics to our own challenges. There's a man in White House in London, in America, and in London in Paris. Why are they telling us that we're creating poverty? We're the one who devalue our money. That is, by the way. Let me answer Chief Okafor in Omahia. If it's a heavy traveler like your guest, if it's a heavy traveler, Yori, it's about aviation industry. None of us today go to airports and all of us will be weeping. Ask your guest. Before I used to go to London with some 600,000 naira. For you to go to London now, Yori, you have to be a millionaire.
I used to travel to South Africa with some 200,000, 250. But if you get to South Africa, you be multi-millionaire. I used to travel inside Nigeria. I used to do 20,000, 40, 50. But if you go from Lagos away, it's 250, 260,000 with APs. And it's not getting better. As long as you cannot transact business easily, the economy is doing well. One thing I love with this government is that they understand the peculiar challenges we have here. Mr. President and the economic team, especially the man in CBN and the finance minister, they understand that we are going through challenges. But what I'm trying to tell them is they should stop listening to MS. There's no way that World Bank I make that giving a policy in Africa and the economy gets better. You just mention one nation, which IMF, the World Bank has given it a policy that proves us better. I'm not an economist, I'm not an expert. Let me mention one. Therefore, should leave us alone. We have what it takes to make Nigeria work. If you can handle security, if you can handle some politicians who are using insecurity to sabotage this government, and I'm afraid bold and clear, most of the insecurity we have here are political giants, people who say they know, who have come on before, who are doing something well, than one who is manipulating this security. We have had it. People can handle it. Nigeria can fix themselves. This government has what it takes to put us in the right direction. I'm a pastor. If they come to the church as pastor every Sunday, I'm not a big man pastor, I'm a local pastor. If people come to church, people come to ask me for money for food and food. How do you work it? You are just made a proverb. If you take food issue from a man, all that can be handled. When people come to my office just like yesterday, nobody's asking for transportation things, for cars, for fuel. What they're asking is rice, beans, and garri, which is no more in our reach here. We have to pay for the first here. And we should stop listening to us, please. Stop this, Nigeria.
Thank you very much for calling in, Reverend Dominic. Okay, Dr. Yusuf, Reverend Dominic is impatient with IMF. Can we really take IMF out of the equation when we're looking at economic worldviews?
No, I agree with his position, because we need to reckon with the peculiarities of our own environment. The IMF and all the guys in Washington cannot understand this environment better than those of us that are here. We cannot discard completely their policy propositions. But at the same time, we cannot adopt everything hook, line, and sinker.
Okay. That
is what I will say. Because if you look at IMF, it's only lately they are talking about social issues, about poverty. They hardly talk about that. I'm talking of IMF. Their focus is essentially on the macros. Once the macro indicators are looking good, then the economy is fine.
Okay. Yes.
Exactly the same thing.
And they don't concern themselves very much with micro. They concentrate on macro.
Yes. The economy is about people.
Okay. One moment, sir. Let me bring in Mr. George, calling in from Lagos. Good morning, Mr. George.
Good morning, Uncle Yori, and good morning to the guest.
Yes.
Uncle Yori, each time I listen to Dr. Yusuf, I used to wonder why he is not a member of the President's economic team. You see, macroeconomic indicators is the yardstick that international institutions use in measuring economics. Nigeria cannot be an exception, and you cannot divorce it from the effects of any economy. That's just the truth of the matter. What I wanted to ask Dr. Yusuf, I remember in this program he highlighted this commodity board issue that the president has in his manifestos. I was expecting that by now that he is paying more attention to agriculture, we would also address that one to help in the prices of foodstuffs in the market. I don't know what has happened to that. Subsidy, as he has said, is inevitable in some situations. Even the best or most powerful economies in the world, they still apply subsidies in one way or the other, whether it's a free market economy or it's a social economy. Now, if the government can pay additional attention when the foodstuff people go to the market to buy is a bit cheaper, the noise will reduce. And I hope these never-do-wells who are saying they can fix Nigeria's economy in 3 days. I hope they are listening to Dr. Yusuf this morning. These are people who know what economy is about, who know how it works, and who are tested in the game. I don't know.
Right. All right, then.
But I think the government should pay additional attention to this issue of commodity board. That is, government would buy products from farmers and at a particular price and retail to citizens at affordable prices. That's a form of subsidy. That one, I believe, can work in addition to many of the suggestions that Mr. Adurusimi made.
Okay, then. Thank you very much for calling in, Mr. George. Okay, Dr. Yusuf, maybe just to summarize and close now, because we have barely 90 seconds left. Your commentary is going to have to be very sparse on what we've heard just now.
Well, we are generally on course, but just as all your callers have said, we need to pay greater attention to the social dimension of economic management. That is extremely very important, and that will require the deployment of targeted policies from the monetary side, from the fiscal side, from the trade policy side, and also from the tax side. We need to target these social issues so that we can calm the nerves of the citizens as far as the cost of living is concerned. And we also need to be careful about this tax thing. 2026 is a pre-election year. We need to know what kind of tax rate we'll be implementing in 2026 so that we don't play into the hands of the coalition. Okay. This is just an advice. The tax can also be very sensitive. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Yusuf. I know there's a lot more where that came from, but for now, we're going to have to sort of abbreviate it here. Thank you very much for making time for us this morning in your schedule. Really appreciate you, as always. Okay, then.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, sir. So that's our program today. Do please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I am Yori Polani. Bye-bye.